So this isn't gonna work because he's kind of in my way, but it's a really cool statue, and since it looks like we'll never get to use it again, figured now is as good a time as any to put it on the table. So, today we're gonna do a little bit of a whiteboard rant with no whiteboard. Reason being, I don't think I should throw too many jokes into this one because we're already dealing with a lot of misinformation on Spider-Man leaving the MCU. Reports have stated that it's already gone through. Reports have stated that Sony is causing the problems. Reports have stated that Disney is causing the problems. People have said everything from there are counterpoints to different deals to all kinds of misinformation on the entire Sony and Disney deal. Okay? Now, let me clarify one thing right up front. We are going to give you the actual base bones knowledge as it is in the public when I researched everybody's little rumors and whatever. That's what we're gonna start with here. Now, the original Sony and Disney deal was that Sony and Disney would work together to make solo Spider-Man movies, and Disney would incorporate Spider-Man into the MCU so that together they would be together. Sony would retain ownership of characters such as Venom, Morbius, and basically the entire extended roster for Spider-Man. But Disney would get to use Spider-Man and some key players. Obviously, Vulture was one of those, Hydra Man got mentioned, Mysterio, that kind of a thing. This is the public knowledge on that deal. And bear in mind, no one ever really revealed all the nitty-gritty of any of these deals. If you hear anybody who's like, here is exactly the terms of the deal between Sony and Disney, I couldn't find that. I couldn't find it when this was first announced, and now I couldn't find it either. Because as far as we were told, Sony was going to finance the entire things for solo Spider-Man movies. Marvel would then loan Kevin Feige and some core staff to ensure that it is properly placed into the MCU and that it plays along with MCU rules. But Sony was upfront costing the entire cost of Homecoming and Far From Home. At the end of the deal, when the movie came out, Sony would collect majority of the profits from the sales, but Disney would get first dollar gross. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, first dollar gross is actually used by some actors within Hollywood to make more money than expected. What it is they'll make more money on the opening day of the film. So doing this type of a deal could be very lucrative for Disney, could have been. But it wasn't, and that's actually, I think, a lot to do with the movie-going market as it stands right now. I guess historically, I even looked into first dollar gross. Leonardo DiCaprio apparently does that quite often and made bank off of Inception doing that. So Disney was taking 5% first dollar gross. Now, they retained all rights to use Spider-Man in animated series and cartoon aspects, and they retained all rights to have all the money from merchandising. Sony got none of that. So Sony basically would finance individual Spider-Man movies, Marvel would help make them good, and then basically Sony would pocket majority profits. That was the original arrangement, as signed by both companies back when this whole thing went down. The deal was 3 to 4 regular Spider-Man movies with various cameos and crossovers. The crossover cameo count's a bit weird. I guess Infinity War and Endgame both counted as one for most of those actors, but either way, that was the original deal. Now, the movie-going market has changed quite a bit, and the opening box office is not necessarily where a lot of the money comes out of anymore. A lot of times it's the opening weekend or when it opens up elsewhere, things like that. Combined with the fact that Spider-Man Far From Home has decidedly done so amazingly well that it broke $1 billion, Disney decided to go back to Sony early and try to renegotiate their deal. Now, public knowledge on what we have. Supposedly, it was Disney approached Sony, instead going forward, they want to go 50-50. So that arrangement would have been Sony and Disney would have split the financing costs now, so they both would have gone in on making the movie better, but they would have split the profits at the back end of that. That is an insane deal for Sony to do. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. 50-50. That would be like me going to you with your job, and like you're sitting at your job, and I go, hey, I know right now you make a full paycheck, 100% of your wages, but I'm gonna give you a guy to help you do your job, and I'm gonna give him half your money. Would you agree to that? No, you wouldn't. From an investor standpoint, that'd be the stupidest thing for Sony to agree to. Now, word has supposedly come out as of this morning, which is actually why I waited so long to do this whiteboard rant, so we can get some more confirmation and stuff, that supposedly the deal was a 70-30 split in favor of Sony. That's still insane. Right now, Sony finances the entire movie, puts $200 million up, gets back $1 billion. It doesn't make sense for them to do otherwise. There's also 2 movies left in Tom Holland and Disney's contract. So as it stands right now, Sony had 0 reason to renegotiate their current terms. There's no reason to do it. Be it 70-30, be it 50-50, there's no reason to renegotiate. There's still 2 movies left that Disney was supposed to help produce with them, and they would finance the whole thing. Now, we don't know the nitty-gritty on that financing. Did Sony pay for every one of Disney's writers and Kevin Feige for their segments on the movie? We don't know any of that stuff. Now, there's also supposedly reports going around that part of this is that Kevin Feige wants to get credit for being on other movies. Apparently, he was helping with Venom and things like that. Don't know how true that is. We can't find any concrete confirmation on that. There's also rumors going around that Sony supposedly came back with a counteroffer of 10% first dollar on gross, and Disney denied that. Once again, I can't find that information anywhere. Since this whole entire argument is nothing but financial debates and arguments, what I've been looking at is financial reports on the whole situation. Because those are the guys that are gonna be like, hey, should you invest in Sony and Disney? Here's what went down. They're not gonna give you rumor mills and stuff like that. As far as we, the general public knowledge go, and the investors know at the moment, Disney approached Sony with a 70-30 or a 50-50 deal. Sony would be stupid to take that deal because they've currently got them locked in for 2 more movies and didn't counteroffer. Now, the fanboys are going crazy on the internet. They're like, oh my God, Sony, just give in. Would you, if your buddy got the deal at his job that he now has to make 50% of his wages and someone's going to help him do it when he doesn't need help and needs the money, would you tell your buddy, dude, just break down and just let the other buddy go in there and do it. Let them help you out. You wouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense. Just like everyone's going, well, Sony should have countered with something. Once again, from a business standpoint, why counter? As it stands, you have Marvel locked in for 2 more movies. Whether if they back out of the deal or not doesn't matter. Now, that is, like I said, that's the bare bones. There's so many rumors going around. I've heard people tweeting out going, well, Marvel fronted the entire cost of the movie and Sony was making bank. No, not true. Even if that were true, that would be the stupidest deal ever for Disney to make. Why would Disney front $200 million and then make back 5% first dollar on gross when chances are it's probably not gonna break $200 million. If anything, they'd break even. That wouldn't make any sense. The secondary argument that I like to see is that, well, Sony wouldn't have a success without Marvel, so they should buckle down. I kind of agree with you on that. They wouldn't have a success with Tom Holland if Marvel didn't do this, or Marvel Disney didn't do this. But at the same time, Disney Marvel signed the contract for the 3 to 4 Spider-Man movies and the crossover. So they should at least honor to the end of that, then reapproach Sony with this more ludicrous deal. A lot of what I'm seeing are just fanboys trying to side against Sony. And from what I have read on the investor forums and what's going through all of the financial reports, which by the way, for the record, are very boring to read, okay? It's very boring to go through everyone's financial reports on this situation. It sounds entirely like Disney just said, you know what? We don't like that you made $1 billion in that movie and we got 5% first dollar on gross, so we want to renegotiate our terms. It sounds like Disney Marvel decided that they just wanted more of that pie and they're gonna go over and argue with Sony. So that leads us to the next issue, this brand loyalty that everyone seems to have. Everyone's like going crazy for the MCU. I love the MCU. Let me, for the record, I love every MCU movie out there. Even the worst movies are some of their best movies. And I credit the MCU for bringing superheroes into the mainstream pop culture that allows people like me to now make a living. I mean, this whole thing is what predicated my entire channel and everything that I do. I love the MCU, and I love Spider-Man in the MCU. Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes. Over in the Marvel wheelhouse, I like Spider-Man and Deadpool the most. So of course, I want Spider-Man in the MCU. Why would I not want him in there? But this is a slight problem we're having here, because this deal came out, and regardless of Disney asking for 50%, regardless of them asking for 30%, regardless of Sony countering or not countering, every Marvel MCU fanboy is automatically siding with Marvel because they should have Spider-Man. I don't know if I agree with that. You see, Disney and Marvel have started creating a monopoly in which they've now got almost all of their characters back. Which is good, because we're gonna get some cool crossovers, we're gonna get some cool movies, we're gonna get some cool videos. But on the flip side, they have full control over everything. There's no competition, there's no different walks of life. We're not gonna get something like, we would never have gotten Deadpool or Venom if the MCU had created them initially. The Deadpool wouldn't have been the same movies. You never would have gotten those X-Men movies that really ended up petered out and didn't do well in the end, but you never would have gotten those if Marvel had made all of this stuff themselves. Shows like The Boys wouldn't exist if Marvel had control of every type of superhero and stuff like that. I know The Boys is an independent book written somewhere else, I know all that. I'm just giving it as an example. That type of show wouldn't exist in an MCU roster. So having superheroes like Spider-Man not fully be in the MCU or owned by Marvel so that they don't have full say in them, I kind of agree with. It's like diversifying. We want to have different takes and stuff like that. And I bring this up for a very particular reason. And I won't lie, I like to be a free thinker. I like to come up with my own ideas. I didn't come up with this one. I didn't even think about this until I read an article from Stan Lee's daughter on this situation. And just to give you an idea of this brand loyalty and the problems I have with it, because I know my mind's a little scattered right now, and we're gonna talk about the Stan Lee daughter thing in 1 second, but I don't understand the people siding against Sony with MCU and stuff like that. Marvel and Disney don't care about me, they don't care about you. They're a corporate entity whose entire purpose is to drive sales into merchandising and movies. That is what they care about. You may have a lasting attachment to Spider-Man, but they don't care. If Disney did care, they wouldn't even try to renegotiate this until those next 2 movies are done. They don't care about how much you like Spider-Man. They don't care how much you like the Fantastic Four. They don't care how much we love Marvel. They don't care that I grew up with these superheroes and use them as idols. They don't care about any of that. They care about how much money are you willing to put into this. They don't care if you're loyal to them. They don't care if you're going to side with them against Sony. They don't care if Sony doesn't care if you're going to side with them against Marvel. No, they don't care. They just want your money. This boils all the way back to brand loyalty of Coke versus Pepsi. Do you think either one of those companies really cares if you still buy their product? Do you think boycotting is gonna do very much when everyone else is still buying their product? Like, that's what I've never understood. Why people are like, well, I boycott, there's no reason, but I boycott Pepsi because of their latest commercial. Okay, well, the other millions of people are doing it. You got your principles, but you're not gonna shut the company down. Like, it's just how it is. I mean, this goes Pepsi, Coke, people siding with those. Xbox versus PlayStation. It doesn't matter, because they don't honestly at the end of the day care about any of us. And if you don't believe me, you would think that Marvel and Disney would be like head over their heels trying to talk to the daughter of Stan Lee. Which brings me to what she said here is what made me really, this is right, what she said is right. So when this started going on, originally Stan Lee tweeted out, "I think Tom Holland is a great Spider-Man. He's the exact height and age I envisioned when I first wrote Spider-Man. Spidey was never supposed to be large. How is my friend Tom doing?" Okay, so Stan Lee approved of Tom Holland as Spider-Man. But speaking with TMZ, and yes, I know they're a tabloid, so maybe this is taken out of context, but what is said makes a lot of sense. Joanne, who is the daughter of him, Stan's daughter, Joanne Celia, insisted that potentially removing the superhero from the Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe is something Stan actually would have wanted. You see, speaking to TMZ about the decision, Joanne said, "Marvel and Disney are seeking total control of my father's creation, and they must be checked and balanced by others who, while still seeking profits, have a genuine respect for Stan Lee and his legacy." She goes on to state, whether it's Sony or someone else's, the continued evolution of Stan's characters and his legacy deserves multiple points of view. According to Deadline, Sony and Disney are unable to come to an agreement over money, with the publication stating that the latter asked for any future films starring the superhero be a 50-50 co-financing arrangement, something Sony refused to consider. Instead, they reportedly wanted to keep their current deal, offering the studio 5% of the first dollar grossing, which the studio declined, so what we already know. The 69-year-old ended her comments with a scathing attack directly aimed at Disney and Marvel, and this will make you think about things. "When my father died, no one from Disney or Marvel reached out to me. From day one, they have commoditized my father's work and never shown him or his legacy any respect or decency. In the end, no one could have treated my father worse than Marvel and Disney executives. There are those that supported her and others who opposed her comments," one Twitter user praising her for standing up against Disney. He wrote, "Proud to see more people are finally standing up to Disney. It's about time. Joanne Cecilia Lee spoke some hard truth, and I think everyone, especially the crazed fans out there, need to hear this. I'm on her side." At the end of the day, guys, we all love Spider-Man being in the MCU. We all want him in the MCU. We want this deal to go through. I want this to work. But is it really gonna be that terrible if we got one hell of an amazing Spider-Man series of movies between Homecoming, Infinity War, Civil War, Endgame, and then Far From Home, and then that was his participation in the MCU, and then we get to see what Sony does? Everyone likes to rag on Sony for the Amazing Spider-Man and crashing and burning all the franchise there, but they still made the Tobey Maguire stuff, and maybe they learned quite a bit from this entire experience. Who knows? I'm not saying that they definitively are going to fail, they're definitively going to do well. For all we know, it's going to be the worst movie ever created if they have to pull out. And for all we know, tomorrow, because I'm filming this on Thursday morning with the news initially breaking on Tuesday, tomorrow they're going to come to terms and we're going to have Spider-Man in the MCU to the end of time. But the fact that Disney decided to go to Sony and renegotiate the deal before the end of the terms, that's what makes me a little wary on this whole situation. Because this isn't like Sony pulled out. This isn't comments made by Amy Pascal creating problems. Last thing I want to go is I actually have a theory on this whole thing. My theory is that they came to the original terms and Amy Pascal was going around to interviews toting that they were going to take Spider-Man back and they were going to pull him back into their universe and stuff like that. That's cool and all, but I wonder if Disney then said, okay, so we're gonna make Homecoming, we're gonna make Infinity War, we're gonna make Civil War, we're gonna make Endgame. Spider-Man is going to be concrete implemented into the MCU. You will have no option but to bend to our terms or back away and start over. Because if you think about this for one moment, this is not going to be a clean break. If this ends, they're not gonna go make another Tom Holland movie. The entire MCU Tom Holland is looking up to Iron Man, right? Can't do that again. His entire current storyline is taking place post-Snap. Can't reference the Snap. His entire reveal at the end of Far From Home, can't go into that storyline. Like, they would not be able to use Tom Holland Spider-Man at Sony. And I'm theorizing that maybe this is what Disney wanted. Install him so deeply into the MCU that they have no option but to agree to new terms or to start over. And maybe Sony will start over. Who knows? I don't know. None of us are going to know, and this news could be completely over in the next day or two. But I wanted to give you guys my opinion on this entire situation. To summarize what I've gone through, because I feel like I may have ranted a little bit, though I feel like I may have been more on point than a lot of my whiteboard rants. This is terrible. I'm really distraught. Told you I had a word today, calendar. Distraught that Spider-Man may leave the MCU. I want him here. I want to see what they're going to do with it. If it does happen, at least from an outsider's perspective in the financial reports, this looks like it was Disney's doing. This does not look like it was Sony's doing. This looks like it was Disney going, hey, you made a lot of money and we want your money. That's exactly what this looks like. Disney's a corporate entity. They got investors to please themselves, and they're currently going to bat over this Disney Plus thing, looking for any money that they can. Also, keep in mind, because I've also seen comments of, well, maybe they can use Tom Holland in the Disney Plus shows. I don't believe so. Once again, no one actually knows the terms of all of these deals, but I believe Disney can make cartoons of Spider-Man, but they can't make anything live action without permission from Sony, very much like how The Incredible Hulk worked. And merchandising, like I said, stays with Disney either way, which is why, because a lot of people like to say, oh, well, Disney and Marvel made stuff for Spider-Man during the crappy Sony movies. Yeah, because they make money off the merchandising, and it was reported years ago, but there's more money in the merchandising for Spider-Man than any movie involving Spider-Man. Just some food for thought. All right, that's my opinion on the whole thing. I guess if he goes back to Sony, we can just like take the claws off and it'll still kind of work. Has anyone got spray paint? We'll make it look like the new one. That work? That'd be cool. Oh, real quick, totally forgot about this one. It's going on the end bumper. Me, Andy, and Dan are gonna be talking about this a lot more in depth on the Comics Experiment this week. So make sure you check out our podcast discussion on Saturday as I bring up all these points to Andy and Dan, who didn't get to see this video when I was recording it, and we discuss it more in depth. We go over the whole thing, the whole situation with Fox, Sony, and Marvel. And don't forget, if you want to talk to me directly about it, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get more opinions, lists, complete stories, and you can find us on Twitter @ComicsStorian. It's like I forgot how to YouTube or something. It's like someone decided to come at me and split the deal 50-50, and the 50 that I lost was ending YouTube videos.